Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mediate podcast. Your hosts today are Harry and Ethan, the
Again.
regular duo that we have. Yep. I think at the moment there'll probably be a lot more episodes, which is just us two talking about TV shows that we've watched rather than the whole group, just because we've got anime to watch and we also have. I need to start preparing the notes more for our final Music Mates episode, and then I think once we've done those two, it'll just be the final Mediate 4, right?
Yeah, there's some
So
Pokemon
we've
stuff
got.
as well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
But there's also this series that we've started, Ethan, for some reason, when we talk about film trilogies that we saw like 6 months ago. Um,
Yeah, but that's not all because after we've done this and the Before trilogy, we'll be looking at other trilogies, even artsier ones.
oh yeah, we're
So
gonna
recently
keep
we're gonna
getting more and
do.
more artistic.
Yeah, yeah, we're looking at the Human Condition at some point. The Coca trilogy, that
Apu.
Indian trilogy, yeah, Apu trilogy. So we've got those coming up ahead, which should be exciting, but there's probably no rush to do those. So today we're going to be looking at the Three Colors trilogy. I guess mainly Three Colors Red and Three Colors Blue, just because I guess me and Harry share the popular opinion, which is that Three Colors White isn't all that. It's definitely the low point of the trilogy if you compare it to its predecessor and what comes afterwards. I guess successor, you'd say, which are just so much better, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll start with Blue because obviously that's the first one, and there was the first one I saw. I watched all of these films in like one day. I'm pretty sure because they were on movie. Um,
Yeah, well, I watched Three Colors Blue, and then a long time afterwards, I watched White, and then I think I watched Red the day after. So I watched White and Red within a day of each other, and I think after that, I rewatched Blue with a friend, and then I rewatched Red with that same friend, and then you, and then our housemate, as well. So I've seen the first and third one twice. Only seen the second one once. Probably won't watch it again for a while. Actually, no, that's not true. I've seen them all twice now. Actually, I did rewatch White for a second time, but I was only kind of half paying attention. I was busy doing something else while it was on because I was watching it with that same friend because we said that we were going to watch all three of them together. And when it came to White, I couldn't really be bothered, so I think I must have done some writing while we were watching it or something like that. So I wasn't really paying attention. So I've still only really seen it the one time. But we can start off by talking about Three Colors Blue, which I think is both of our second favorites,
yeah,
right?
I think we've got the same ranking.
I think we have exactly the same ranking, yeah. Um, but I do know people who think that blue is better than red. But I think, yeah, like I said, it's not often that you'll meet someone who thinks that white is the best one. So Three Colors Blue is
Wait. Are we going to
is
talk about the Lego game?
oh god, is this an inside joke that we have that I've completely forgotten about?
I
The
think
Lego
yeah.
Three Colors.
We're talking about the three colors Lego game and what each level would be. It'd be a hospital escape.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and the final level of the Three Colors Blue uh part of the game is you have to like write the song, don't you? And you've got to like organize the pieces together. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, that's great. I think
yeah.
I think Three Colors White we had you've got to like find your way back to your hometown after you get locked in a suitcase and you get let out, but you're in a completely different part of the country that you wanted to end up. So that was definitely one more. Yeah. So Three Colors Blue is about a woman called Julie, I think, played by Juliette Binoche, and the plot of the film is it starts off with her and her family, so her partner and daughter, I believe it is the daughter and not a son.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, um, getting into a really serious car accident, and her husband and child dies, and she gets given this news, and then the rest of the film, in kind of a in a very sort of, I guess, kind of not really artsy as such, but I guess in a very kind of not plot driven way, doesn't it? Of course, it has scenes and it has a sense of direction, but it kind of shows you how she adjusts to this new life in different ways, right? Rather than having to go from like a concrete point A to concrete point B. So she gives up her house and moves to the main city. I think it's Paris, which is where most of the film's set. And you kind of see kind of the characters that she meets, um, having moved to this new place. And you see in the ways that her past kind of comes back to try and catch up with her. When I think what she wants to do the most is probably try and escape it, right? I mean, why else would she take so many steps to kind of leave that life behind?
So yeah, I guess one thing we'll say about the trilogy before I kind of talk about the blue, or actually it kind of relates to it, is that similar to Decalogue, this trilogy is like taken like a famous thing and like kind of twisted it, in the same way that Decalogue, or the first two that we've seen, take commandments from the Ten Commandments and kind of tell like an ironic story about it. This is kind of
Yeah,
taking the French values, which I think each kind of color of the flag represents. Um, what is it? It's liberty, fraternity is one of
fraternity.
them. I don't know what the other one is.
Yeah, so it's liberty, fraternity, and then I believe it's equality is the middle one. Equality is for three colors white.
Yeah, and
Um,
it
but
kind of
yeah, it
takes those things, doesn't it? And also kind of takes those kind of genre associations of like tragedy, comedy, and romance, and kind of inverts those, as well. And also the probably the most notorious and impressive thing, it sticks to the color palette, of the respective color. So obviously this is a very melancholy story. I think it looks great. I think the blue kind of really suits the type of atmosphere that the film's kind of going for.
definitely. But specific colors also raise certain emotions, right? So you always associate blue with sadness or I guess melancholy, and three colors blue has an abundance of that. Whereas if you look at three colors red, you always kind of associate the color red. You do associate it with blood, sure, but you also associate it with you associate it with desire, don't you? And what am I trying to say?
Yeah,
I
I
guess
see
you
what you
do
mean.
associate the color red with romanticism, don't you?
Yeah,
It's about
definitely.
having a passion, right? About having some kind of passion. And Three Colors Red definitely has that in, I guess, the relationship between the two main characters. But I always saw the whole fraternity, equality, and liberty as kind of yeah, I think inversions is a good way of putting it. So, I guess there's also kind of like an irony there, or a sarcastic twist to it, where I think if you associate in the Three Colors White case, the premise of that film, without we'll talk about it when we do get there, is you think of equality as in the real world putting everyone on the same level, right? So you have people up above and then you have people down below, and the idea is that you bring the people below up to the same level as the people at the top, and that's a very basic way of looking at what equality is. But the inverted process of thinking about that Three Colors White does really well, that I actually quite like about the film, is that instead of bringing people up to your level, the whole film is about bringing someone down to your level, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because
and
in Three Colors White, yeah,
in the blue one, obviously, it's kind of being liberated in like the most kind of tragic way, and isolating yourself and kind of locking yourself in your apartment, not getting involved, with anyone else. Um, Kind of, yeah, just being incredibly kind of isolationist, and kind of trying to fracture yourself from the society you live in. Um, I think that's kind of what they were going for with the idea of being liberated through tragedy in this film. Um, I think yeah. Talking about it more generally, I think it is a really good film. I think it's a performance from Juliette Binoche where she has quite a lot on her because obviously she has to kind of labour the weight of the tragedy at the start of the film. Was also not really saying much. I think a lot of it is kind of her expressions and the way she reacts to things. She's quite
Yeah,
withdrawn and not necessarily. She doesn't. Obviously you sympathise with her because she's been through a tragedy, but she's not the most kind of likable character because she's so kind of withdrawn and refuses to kind of get involved until maybe the end of the film. Um,
sure, definitely. I mean, she plays quite a passive, reserved character, isn't she? Um, and I definitely think that what drives you to spend time with her so much is like you said, the tragedy that happens at the start of the film, which is her entire family or close family being killed off in such a horrible, horrific way. Um, but I would agree with that, and Three Colors Blue has that. Like I said at the start, not really going anywhere that's immediately obvious. And I think as the film goes on, you realize that what this really is just going to be a combination of scenes that do thread together somehow. But it's mostly about her just interacting with people, right? So she has her husband, well, her former husband's partner, who she
mhm.
ends up becoming involved with. Um, there's a woman who lives a couple of floors below her, who asks for her help one evening. Um, trying to remember who else there is. There's obviously the woman who she goes to visit who had an affair with her husband as well, right? So there's all these kind of characters that you end up seeing and new kind of aspects of Juliette Binoche's new life. And then what was happening on top of that is this really interesting. I think if there is one recurring plot, or if there is one kind of goal or aim that's happening throughout the entire film, is her husband's like magnum opus, sorry, having to be completed, right? And it asks that really interesting question at the start where Juliette Binoche is being interviewed, and someone says, "Oh, is it true that your husband didn't write his own music or something like that?" And it opens these really interesting possibilities. And then a lot of the rest of the film is about having to kind of complete this final piece, and it ends with a really, really amazing montage where you kind of see all the characters that Juliette Binoche has met on her journey at that point, and it's not really what they're getting up to as such, but it's kind of it, it's just a really, really great montage, and I think what it does is it kind of just reminds you how these characters have kind of how Juliette Binoche has weaved through these characters' lives and in ways that feel quite minor, but overall will come to have a greater purpose, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a theme that's kind of carried on and it's most significant in the third film. The idea of kind of everything being connected,
Mm.
and your actions kind of accounting for things, and just to kind of draw connections across the trilogy. You have in the background of one of the shots the characters from the white Three Colors White at one point, and you have the recurring image of an old woman trying to get a bottle into a recycling bin, and it's kind of it's almost like a value on if each of the characters represent something, what are they going to do? Juliette Binoche, I think she kind of looks but ignores maybe. She pretends she doesn't see. And just to go back as well, when you were mentioning that montage, which I think is also really good, great. Um, I think it's significant that the piece is like it's. I don't know if it's an EU or it's like a piece to unite Europe is like the theme of it, and it's kind of
Mm.
instruments from different countries. So it's kind of significant that the liberation of oneself into their own kind of away from everyone else, or trying to. I think eventually, as the ending shows, it's kind of impossible to do that, and it's kind of the wrong thing to do. This piece of music is almost the opposite. It's meant to kind of unite everyone as one, and like each kind of person or each country in this kind of sense is going to come together. And then after kind of completing that piece, she's kind of finally emotionally liberated. Um, and she's able to kind of put herself back into society, which is kind of implied, but you kind of see her crying, and that's kind of the end of the film. Um,
Mm.
I think it's good. The only thing I don't really like about it is this like it's got quite strange editing in that to kind of draw the musical theme, I guess. it has a lot of like crescendos where suddenly the music will swell in a dramatic moment and it will fade to black. And it does this quite a few times throughout the film. Um, and I think that would be fine. But I guess from watching movies on TV and stuff, you kind of get used to ad breaks, where there will be an emotional crescendo, fade to black, and then it's where you put an ad break, and then the movie comes back. So it's weird to watch something where it feels like they've put ad breaks in, even though that definitely wasn't the purpose of it.
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird, and it's kind of hard to. I'm sure you can derive some meaning for it, but it's hard for me to have my own interpretation as to why that string editing choice happens. I mean, I will admit that I like it, and there may not necessarily be an overarching reason. But when I finished watching the film and thinking about it since, I have thought about those moments, those parts where you expect it to, when it fades to black, to fade to a new scene, but all it does is it just fades back in again. I don't know. Maybe it. I'm not sure. Maybe it symbolizes her trying to escape the moment, but basically finding out that she can't do it. And if she is in a situation, she has to confront it at some point. She can't just vanish to a fade to black and then fade back in somewhere else. It's still the same location. And I guess the whole crescendo aspect of it is just to do with the fact that it's a film about music, and it's a film about someone who was married to a great classical composer. Um, so I guess if I had to think about it, that would probably be the purpose
Yeah, I
for
think you're right,
me that it
definitely.
has.
Like it is a really good point that it's kind of in a film about trying to kind of isolate yourself. Um, it draws attention to the fact that it's almost reality isn't a film, and you have to be there in a moment in which you kind of want to suddenly cut and be somewhere else. It just brings you back into the moment, into the kind of awkward encounter and stuff. So yeah, I definitely yeah, I think you're right. I think I remember it kind of jarring me. And another issue I'm sure will, as I rewatch the film and kind of delve deeper into all the meaning, and kind of get used to the rhythm of it over kind of rewatches I'll like. But just on a first watch, it is like a very slow paced film. Obviously the
Mm.
character's very introspective. It's definitely one that you've kind of got to pay attention to. You can't really watch it over like multiple months like you did the first time. Um,
Yeah, definitely. That was a big mistake.
But yeah, you have watched it. You have watched it properly. And
Oh
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the first time that I watched it, I thought it was good, but I wasn't overly keen on it. I just don't think my headspace was.
oh yeah, it's
I just
depressing.
don't think I was in the right place for it. Yeah, but when I watched it a second time in one go, the pieces fit better. But I'm really glad that I'm not just glad that I watched it a second time because that was the first time that I'd properly watched the film. It was also because I think I fully appreciated kind of the approach to um, I guess storytelling the film has that is one that I just like full stop, which is all about subtlety. It's not about a particularly evident storyline that you're attached to. It is just someone's life as they try and cope with something that's a massive, significant part of it. And then having very, very small, minor moments now feel like, having watched it a second time, more of an explanation to it really helps. There's a really, really great little moment where she sat in a cafe, and she hears a guy playing a flute just across the street from her, and she goes to talk to him and asks him, "Excuse me, how do you know that song?" And because she recognised it, and I assume she recognised it because it's a piece that her husband wrote, and he says, "Oh, he heard it from somewhere, or it's a famous song, or something like that." And she doesn't really kind of reply to it, but she just kind of leaves him. Um, but I really like that moment because the question that it raises for me is, if that's a piece that her husband wrote, and this street performer is also playing it, and he says it's a well-known song or something that he heard from somewhere else, it could be that the street performer heard the song because it's a well-known piece of music that her husband had written, or because her husband had ripped it off from somewhere else completely. Which I guess is about in music, originality is kind of hard to come by because everything is built on chords and melodies, and things repeat everywhere basically. But I really like a moment like that because it's kind of ambiguous as to what the underlying idea is. And to me, the main underlying idea is that because of the question that was raised earlier in the film as to the authenticity behind her husband's work, this further reinforces that idea that her husband was kind of a fake, or that he had stolen a piece of music that he had written from somewhere else, or maybe even her husband had walked past that street musician one time, heard that, and thought, "God, that sounds really good. I'm going to incorporate that into my work." But anyway, the idea is that there's like a ton of small moments like that where on the first viewing they felt like not forced as such and not even really contrived, but they almost felt unnecessary, like there wasn't any greater depth to them. But having watched it for a second time now, picking up on small minor moments like that, knowing the themes of the film really have a greater effect, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're totally right. Do you want to move on to White now? Because I don't think we'll have much to say about it. Or do you have anything about Blue that you still want to say?
Um, no, yeah, no, I don't think I really have anything more to say about Blue. No, no, I think I'm okay on Blue. We can move on to White.
I mean, I don't have much to say on White.
Okay.
I think because of as we mentioned, the kind of the theming and coloring and stuff. So White is as a genre is kind of the anti-comedy. Um, it is in terms of the theme. I can't even remember what is it. It's kind of what does White represent? Is it
Freedom. Sorry, not freedom, equality. Equality. I said that at the
Ah,
start.
so it's
Equality.
kind of the anti-equality, which kind of becomes a revenge thing. And the color of the
Mm.
film that's very prominent is white. And I guess that's probably one of my biggest problems is that red and blue are so aesthetic and just have a pop and more of kind of an emotional weight to them. Whereas
Yeah.
white, only in a few scenes, like a few kind of flashback moments, and like idealized kind of fantasy scenes, do I think the white really comes through when it's really high saturation, and it will be like GDLP kind of on their wedding day and stuff. And I think that stuff really works. But throughout the kind of rest of the film, I think it's visually quite bland. Um, Anti-comedy is a kind of revenge comedy. I mean, it could be really good. You only have to tweak a few things about it, and you get Gone Girl. But
Huh.
in the version that we have, I don't think it's as compelling or interesting as the other two. What do
Yeah,
you think?
I would definitely I would definitely agree with that. I think so. A couple of problems that I have with it. I guess the big one is I'm not a particularly big fan of the main performance. Um, I mean, when I think about Three Colors Blue and Three Colors Red and what makes them both great and what makes them feel like they're connected to a series of films, is in their very distinct color palette, like you mentioned. It is in the same kind of direct method of direction as well, and especially with a plot that seemingly feels uh, seemingly feels kind of hard to discern. It's hard to know where it's going, and Three Colors White does have that. You kind of don't really know what it is, what the aim of the main character is until it all comes together at the end, which is a good part of it. But at that point, I was kind of so uninterested that I didn't really care when I found out that it was like, oh, okay, so this has all been to get back at your wife, sure. But anyway, so that's problem number one. The second problem that I was just about to mention was the fact that I just don't think his performance is that great when you compare it to Juliette Binoche's and Irene Jacobs in Three Colors Red. And it's also the fact that those two films are about they're kind of about women coping with relationships, but there's like a I think Three Colors White goes for like twists and turns and like aha, this was all a surprise kind of thing. Whereas what I like about Three Colors Blue and Three Colors Red is that it's so much kind of more slow going in that way. It's not really about trying to catch you off guard. It's about trying to, give you a really it's about trying to give you a really good insight into a particular character's life and their insecurities, what they're motivated by, what they want. Um, while you kind of spend time trying to unravel the character. I mean, one of the great things about Three Colors Blue is because of the fact that Juliette Binoche. I mean, she's a fantastic actress. She plays that character with such subtlety, and I mean it's such a passive performance that you do spend a lot of time trying to unravel her in your head, trying to figure out what she's thinking in a particular moment, because her reactions are always so um, they're hard to kind of figure out. And I think what I would have definitely preferred, therefore, from Three Colors White, is Julie Delpy to be the lead character. Pretty much just switch the script around, have it so that her husband is the one who ruins her life, and she spends the film trying to get him back. And already you've solved the problem that I don't really like the main character, or I don't think he's particularly charismatic or charming or interesting in any way, and you replace him with not Juliette Binoche, with Julie Delpy, who is a really great actress who I love because of the Before trilogy, and she could have played that role if you'd kind of maybe changed a few character traits round so that she was playing a similar character to he was. It could have been such a better film, and then you would have the consistency where it's three different stories set in France about three different women trying to cope with different things going on in their life that are all different, and it's not about trying to shock you or catch you off guard. It's just about trying to show you scenes from someone's life, and that would have automatically made Three Colors White a much better film, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely gender swapping would have helped because as it currently exists, it's basically about a guy getting revenge on his bitch wife, for ruining his life. Um, I think I like the aspects that he's a Polish immigrant, um, and everything is tied up into this kind of marriage. It's like a very kind of unhealthy relationship, I guess. Um, and he's impotent, and that's kind of why she's leaving him. And it's this idea that he can't kind of he's unable to kind of perform this kind of masculinity that is the reason that basically everything in his life is taken away, and he's kind of forced, or he has nothing. He's basically homeless, and he has to
Hmm.
kind of go back to Poland, and that's the only way he can kind of start to make a life for himself again, I guess. I like the relationship he has with the other kind of. I think he's also a Polish immigrant. Um,
Mhm.
I think that's really strong. There's a couple of like little moments, like I like the visual kind of language of the suitcase. I think it opens and maybe even closes the film. Um, and obviously he smuggles himself back in. And I think for a film that is kind of about immigration a little bit, I think it's a good image. I do quite like the ending. I think does he fake his own death and then manages to kind of get her arrested and then goes to see her in prison.
Yeah,
Um,
he does, and it is a good ending, but for me, like I said, at that point, I was kind of zoned out. So when that happened, I was just going, "Oh, yeah, that's cool," but not really feeling, I think, a sense of wonder or awe that you were supposed to feel, um, with a reveal like that, I think.
For the anti-comedy, yeah, I mean, it is an anti-comedy and it's not funny. It does have one quite funny moment where it's like a whole thing about him being impotent, and then he like makes his wife come, and then the the screen just turns white. I thought that was quite funny. Um, that's basically the payoff of the entire film. Like, that one joke. Um,
Uh,
it's so weird. It's like this like French, like a Polish artistic kind of American Pie or something.
yes. So before I watched the film, when you told me that it was an anti-comedy, I was like, "What the fuck is an anti-comedy? Is it like a film that whose comedy is just really kind of like played so straight that you can't even laugh watching it?" And if that's what it's trying to do, then it succeeded because it does kind of have that. But the problem is, it's just not very funny. I really like the first 20 minutes of the film that's not set in Poland, stuff that's set in France, just because of how ridiculous the situation is. I mean, what he's accused of in court is ridiculous, and then when he goes to try and pay with his credit card somewhere else, he gets told that his accounts have been frozen or something like that, and the woman takes his credit card and cuts his credit card with scissors in two, and it's just kind of things like that I think are pretty funny, and especially in the courtroom, because the because of the underlying theme of impotence is there, which is obviously something that you would laugh at and you would find funny. And then when you combine that with the fact that the scene is like played so seriously, but not seriously in a way where it's like over the top seriously. It just feels like a very kind of mundanely acted scene. Um, I think that's what I think of when I think of anti-comedy after watching that film. But the trouble is, it just doesn't keep that up. Really, it goes from having that aspect of it, and then when it gets to Poland, the rest of the film is about like fucking buying land and like becoming rich, but then you don't really you kind of get aspects of that. And then you reach the end of the film and you're like, oh, okay, well that just wasn't as good as Three Colors Blue. But it does have one really great scene. I think one of the best scenes in the entire trilogy is the one at the train station with him and his friend, where his friend asks him to shoot him. Right, you remember the
Yeah,
one?
yeah, definitely the
Yeah,
best scene of the film.
yeah, because that film actually, sorry, that scene actually did, get a reaction out of me. It really did put me on edge. My heart felt like it stopped for a second after he fired that gunshot. I think part of that is the fact that the main character, um, his acting admittedly is really good in that scene. I mean, it looks like before he's about to shoot him, it definitely looks like he does not want to do this at all, and he's really scared of the consequences of shooting this person. And then he fires the bullet, and you realize that it's a blank, and then you just realize, oh wow, that was just a really great performance because I did not see that coming at all.
hmm
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's thinking back. That's the moment that when I was watching the film was definitely the most engaged in, and just kind of thinking back on it, the one scene that definitely stands out. In terms of like the connection stuff, obviously it connects to Blue because they go into the courtroom, and Juliette Binoche can be seen in the background. The woman who is trying to put something in the recycling bin, I think he sees it and kind of like laughs or like smiles to himself, because it's someone suffering as much as he is, which is kind of, I guess, ties into the kind of uh, equality stuff. I don't really have that much more to say. I think of all of them, it's definitely the one I remember the least about. I don't think it's like an awful film. Like
no,
the
I
idea of
don't.
his kind of like things keep getting worse and worse and getting revenge is like, I mean, it is interesting, but as Ethan says, it's kind of it's a lot less poetic and deep than the other ones.
Yeah,
Um,
I think poetic and deep is definitely the right way of putting it. But I agree with you. I don't think it's bad. I'm pretty sure that my rating of it on Letterboxd is 3 stars. So I obviously think it's better than it is bad. I think it's an okay film. I just think it's. I mean, when you compare it to the other two, the ones that sandwich it, you kind of go like, well, you could sort of just skip two and go from one to three, and you won't really be missing out on much. And that is the good thing about the trilogy for me. At least you start strong and you end strong, and you have kind of a weaker middle, and that's definitely the way that I like my trilogies. I don't like to have a weak start. Or I mean, a weekend is the worst thing. So the fact that the best film of the trilogy is the third one is really, really great. Um,
No, I'm
so
very
I'm glad
much
that.
the third one. I don't care about like
Yeah.
look at the Star Wars trilogy. You have to have the second one be the best. Before trilogy as well. I think you have a good first one, a great second one. You just don't even watch the third one. That's the way you do a trilogy.
See, well, I I think that in history, a lot of the time the best one is the second one. If you have like a really great trilogy of films, but that doesn't mean that's the way round it should be. Like I still think that the best film of any trilogy should be the third one, and you can either go, um, one's the worst, second is the second best, and then third is the best. So they get progressively better. That's
Godfather,
okay.
it's the
Or
better
you can start.
Godfather, Star Wars, the Star Wars sequels, the before. Actually, no, yeah, the before trilogy. Come on, there's a pattern, you know.
Yeah, there is a pattern, but that still doesn't change the fact that the third one in the trilogy just should be the best one because that's what you're getting towards. I mean, especially if it's not a thematic trilogy, if it's a narrative trilogy, and you're literally building to the third film story-wise, it has to be the best one. And if it's not the best one, if it's the worst one especially, then that's where you really let down your audience, if you ask me.
That's fair enough. I mean, Indiana Jones has the same kind of structure as the before, not before, the Three Colors trilogy. It's the same kind of thing where you have good, kind of okay, and then great. Or I guess better than good for Raiders, but you know what I mean. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
Toy
yeah, yeah. No,
Story's
I know what
actually
you
no,
mean.
Toy Story's not. Toy Story 2 is good, even though you don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. Toy Story 2 is a good film. It is. I just
All right, should we?
think,
Cause we've got about 20 minutes. Do you want to quickly do Red or move on to Red?
yeah, less than 20 minutes now, actually. Let's try and do Red. But at the same time, if we don't do all of Red, I'm happy to stop and then do the last like 5-10 minutes
We can do Red.
at some
Let's do
point
Red.
really soon. Okay, okay.
What do you think about Three
So,
Colors Red, even?
it's the best one in the trilogy. What do you think about
Yeah, I also think that. Why do you think so?
it? Why do I think Three Colors Red is the best trilogy? Sorry, Three Colors Red is the best in the trilogy. Um, I think it's because it has. I think what makes it the best one simply is the fact that, like you said, it has like that poetic edge that the first one has, and that appeal that I mean I find that kind of thing really appealing in a film. But it's also I don't think as you could probably argue about this, but I don't think it's as cynical as the first one, or at least the first one spends a lot of its time rooted in a depressing
Yes.
situation
Yeah.
or just
Yeah, that's where you're right.
being around, yeah, being around something that's obviously really upsetting. Whereas Three Colors Red, it's kind of it's not really happy or sad. It's kind of more neutral, but the fact that it's more neutral means that you'll kind of I think enjoy yourself more watching it. Um, but I think similarly, the whole kind of phone hacking aspect of it as well kind of ties into Three Colors White a little bit, where it's not just about following a woman's life and seeing where it goes without really any like obvious destination. Um, it also has kind of like I guess it has more of like a plot led edge to it, which is quite good. So it kind of has the best of one and the best of two. And then everything else about it is also really really great. I think probably if we before we get into this properly, we should talk about the plot first. But I will just say that the fact that it's got this kind of dual narrative where there's sort of mirroring in each other, but it's really really weird, and we will talk about that, and you know exactly what I'm talking
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
as well,
It
don't
is
you?
strange. I
It's
think you
probably
were
the best
talking
thing about
about
the film.
blue, and yeah, because blue is, I mean, it is blue, like not only in its like subject matter, but just the coloring.
Mm,
It is kind of like
definitely.
it feels like an emotional kind of labor to get through a little bit. And red, I mean, it is cynical. It's maybe I guess the kind of creepiest or like the strangest. Although it's kind of self aware in that it's not the main character. It's like, oh yeah, you should be listening to this conversation. Um, but
Mm,
yeah, I
mm.
think it definitely helps that it just is red. It just pops. Like the signature image is someone blowing red bubblegum or pink bubblegum that's gonna kind of
Yeah, yeah,
and yeah, the fact that the main character is a model, the film just kind of looks incredible and it's just really kind of pleasing to look at. So that's immediately grabs you more. And I think the themes of the kind of interconnectedness of all things and the kind of knock on and butterfly effects and the way kind of you can do that in a film where you can have mad kind of circumstances happen and you kind of don't doubt it because it's there is kind of this like magical realist kind of element to the
yeah,
film. In terms of the French flag, this is the kind of fraternity one, um, and I guess the kind of ironic twist is in the judge, the character that she meets because she hits his dog, and then he doesn't care really, and she hears him kind of listening to people's conversations, and wants to kind of report that. Uh, but then he kind of tells her like, look, go to this person's house and go and tell them then. And then going there, she sees that he's having an affair with a man, this guy, but he's got a family, Um,
mm,
so she almost kind of she realizes things are a lot more complicated than that, and also sees that the daughter, also the child, is kind of listening into the conversation on the phone as well. Um, and I think this kind of I think it's complicated, it's multi-layered, and it shows kind of how complex people's lives are, and it further complicates it when you almost kind of the judge as a character kind of almost wins you over a little bit, even if you kind of condemn his actions. And she kind of keeps spending time with him. And the other genre thing is obviously it's an anti-romance in the idea of these two people meeting and these kind of weird fated circumstances is almost like a meet cute. But there's such like a big age difference between them, and they're clearly not going to
Yeah,
have like a romantic connection. But
yeah,
as Ethan was saying earlier, there is this B plot about this young up and coming guy uh, who's becoming a lawyer and eventually a judge, and the circumstances that the old judge is explaining are happening to this young guy, where a page of the book flies open after almost being hit by a car, and it's the page that he needs to win it. This woman having an affair, who's his partner, and it all culminates in the ending, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, it's good. There you go. That's some of the plot
yeah.
and some of the themes, and it's a good film.
Definitely, and with the whole dual narrative thing that it's got going, it's hard because I didn't. I think I started to notice it around the halfway mark, but it wasn't until one really pivotal scene, um, where I think it's between her and the older man that she meets, where it's after some catwalk that she's done, and he talks about something that's so obviously an event that you have seen in the film, and that's the part where I was like, okay, this is unmistakable. Um, this younger guy is the younger version of him, but it's hard to know if that's the right interpretation to have or if it's a valid one to have because the younger version of him, we'll call him the younger version of him anyway, even if he's not, is seen in the is seen in the same shots as Irene Jacob,
Yeah. I
isn't
think
he?
it's not literally him, but it's someone living the
Yeah,
same experience. Like they're going
exactly,
through the same
exactly.
things in that it's kind of fated. That pretty much the same. It pretty much is the guy, but obviously not the guy. Um, like I think it tricks you
Yeah,
into thinking it's going to be like flashbacks, but yeah, and then at the end it's like
that's it. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
It tricks you, or it wants you to think that it's either flashbacks or they're showing you past events, and then the moments where the camera kind of goes from him from the younger version of him to Irene Jacob or vice versa is the moment where it does that leap in time or that leap back in time. But I agree with you. I think I don't think it's quite as literal as that. I think it's a lot more metaphorical. I think it's about how people's lives are they are the same. I guess no one life is the same as another life, but we go through things exactly the same as other people as other people do. We kind of feel the same things other people can. We have the same emotions that other people can, and we see reflections of ourselves everywhere we go, and that's what the film is trying to say to you with that plot. But that's sort of a thought that you get left with after you've watched the film. But while you're watching it and you see these kind of two different plot lines not intersecting, but acting in parallel to one another, it's really exciting because you want to see where it goes. You in fact, I didn't even think it was going to go anywhere particularly. But just to be there, just to see that for the first time and think, God, this is really interesting and very peculiar. I don't think I've ever quite seen, I guess, something that kind of resembles time travel or resembles flashbacks or resembles something like this done in such a way before in a film like this, in a kind of. I don't want to call it an artsy film because it's not an artsy film. An artsy film is something like Persona. It's not that, but a less mainstream film. I suppose a less action blockbustery mainstream film. So that was really really great, and I enjoyed that part of it quite
yeah.
a lot
I think it's
actually.
really good, and I like that this is the as a conclusion to the trilogy. It kind of feels like a thematic conclusion. Um, Not only in the ending, but you have the payoff of hoping the woman finally put the bottle in the recycling. We have our first good protagonist. That's in the spirit of kind of fraternity, I guess. Is kind of
Mm.
willing to actually help someone. I guess we could just talk about the ending now. In that there's this kind of in terms of if it's about fate, and kind of the way things are, I guess. There's a boat crash, and the only people that survive are the protagonists of the films, pretty much. For some reason, Julie Delpy got back together with her husband. She got out of jail. Um,
So that's what leads me to say that the ending of that film takes place before Three Colors White. It has to, surely, right?
yeah,
Three Colors Red must
or
happen
the
before Three Colors White.
she went to prison for his death. I'm pretty sure. So I guess if he showed up was like I'm alive, then she'd get out.
Yeah, but then there's no way they would ever get back together, or they would ever be together again, unless it was for her to try and kill him. Because at the end of the day, she was a bit of a psychopath in Three Colors White. Um, but then now come to think of it, Three Colors Red can't happen before Three Colors White because no, it can, right? Because I'm thinking of the courtroom stuff from Blue and White,
Yeah.
which Red has nothing to do with. So Three Colors Three Colors Red could have actually happened before Three Colors White, and that would make sense.
But yeah,
Um,
it's a really cool ending to the trilogy, I think. Um, I like that the kind of the third act of this film, or the very end of this film, is a good ending for the film. But also, if you've watched the other two, you get that extra payoff and weight in those the ending and the recycling bottle thing. And it's just kind of two small kind of things that kind of run through, but like I think really make it worth watching all of them in the order that they were released for sure. But if you were just to
Definitely.
watch Red, I mean, you'd still think it's a really good film. I think a lot of the
Exactly,
the scenes
exactly. So
between the judge and the main character are really interesting. I think they have some really kind of cool conversations. I think the judge is a good character. I've never seen a Michelle Haneke film, but he feels like a Michelle Haneke character. I don't even know.
yeah, I get why you would say that. I do.
But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's a good film. She's got a really shit boyfriend that she talks to on the phone. Fucking don't like that guy. That guy's the worst. But
Yeah, yeah, he
yeah,
is.
this is the only one I've rewatched as well, so it's probably the one. It's probably the one that if I was gonna watch one of them again, I would just watch this again, to be honest, because it
Mm,
just
mm.
I don't know. It's a good film. It looks good. It's got good ideas, good performances, good scenes, and it ties everything together in a very satisfying way. And it's definitely the best one. Uh, Ethan, you have any more things to say about it?
Um, no, I guess I would say that I agree with you about the conversations the two main characters have. They are kind of philosophical and a bit existential. Um, I do like what I like the ideas that they talk about, the morality of certain things, and I think that's really, really cool. And also the guilt that kind of plagues the judge and has done for like his entire life, basically, and how that kind of plays a role in the person that he is today. Um, so I really, really like all that stuff. And you're right, I would recommend Red as its own film. I would even recommend Blue as its own film. The only reason I would ever recommend someone to watch Three Colors White is in the context of watching all three of them. That's the only reason I would ever do that. I would never say watch Three Colors White by itself. It's a great movie because it really isn't.
Yeah, I mean
Should we slap some numbers
it's
on
a
these
kind of.
films?
Wait, what were you gonna say?
Should we slap some numbers on these films?
Ah, no. I mean, you know the ranking. Ethan said that he'd give White 3 stars, as would I. Uh,
Yeah,
I give the other ones higher. There you go.
yeah. Me too.
Is it better than the Vengeance trilogy? Yes or no?
Ooh. Oh God, that's a good question.
I
Yeah,
think it is.
no,
I
it's
think
not. I
Oldboy
don't
is the
think it
best
is.
individual film, but I think it's a better trilogy. It's definitely more cohesive.
See, if Three Colors White was as good as the other two, then I would say definitely. Three Colors Trilogy is so much better. But because it has that weak point, I'm kind of like sort of brings it down. Whereas The Vengeance is so solid. Like the first two are brilliant movies, and then the third one is also really good. So it's I think out of all the trilogies that we've done on the main podcast, so like Indiana Jones, Godfather, Lord of the Rings, and the other one, the Spaghetti Westerns. I think the Vengeance trilogy is like a lot more consistent in quality than those, even if the other trilogies have better films overall, because it doesn't have a weak point. They're all almost as great as each other. But then Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and Oldboy are just amazing movies as well. Like 9 out of 10 is good.
Yeah, I think
So
if I was giving them numbers, then I think it would add up that Vengeance is better. But I think if I was going to sit down and watch one of them as a trilogy, or be like which is actually as a trilogy is the best, I think it's the Three Colors. I think they tell a more cohesive story across three films and were designed to, whereas Vengeance trilogy are just three films with kind of a thematic resonance going across them.
yeah,
Um,
that's understandable.
do you
But
know? Do
this
you know what would
ranking
win
doesn't
even in
matter.
terms of being a trilogy, and also just having the consistency across the films? It's the Before trilogy. I think that would win.
Yeah, I was just about to say the Before trilogy is my favorite trilogy of all time, hands down. I don't think any. I think things come close, like the spaghetti westerns, for instance. But I don't. Yeah, I don't think that because I kind of go, well, I'll add all the numbers up and that'll be my answer, basically. So the Before trilogy is the best one, and that's what I was just about to say. Whether it's the Vengeance or the Three Colors doesn't matter because we both know that the Before films are better.
Yeah, I think it ties with the original Star Wars, but I'd say Before is probably my favorite trilogy. Um, so yeah, join us next time when we talk about one of the Before films that's going to be even longer than this podcast, probably.
Yeah, I would say so. I'll probably have rewatched the whole trilogy by that point as well.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely rewatch Midnight because I've only seen it once.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Midnight's definitely like my number one as well
Maybe I'll
because I
do
need to watch
Sunset again.
it.
I don't know if I'll do Sun. I feel like I've seen Sunrise too many times.
I've seen the first half of Before Midnight once, and I've seen the second half of Before Midnight twice, but I've never seen the whole film in one go.
Anyway, see you later. Goodbye.